The Voidborn fleet emerged from hyperspace like a plague of darkness. 3 massive ships, each one capable of destroying a planet, moved toward Kepler 442b with mechanical precision. Their black hulls seemed to absorb the light of nearby stars, creating holes in space itself. Captain Hyunwoo Park stood in the command center they had built in the predecessor ruins, watching the enemy approach on their primitive screens. Around him, the last 49,000 humans in the universe prepared for their final battle. "Contact in 6 hours," reported Young-Soo Han from his communication station. The young man had grown up quickly in these past months, his boyish face now marked by the weight of responsibility and loss. The human fleet that rose to meet the Voidborn was pathetic compared to their enemy. 37 ships, most of them civilian transports and mining vessels hastily fitted with weapons. Only 12 were actual military ships, and half of those were damaged from previous encounters. Commander Yoonji Park led the first wave in her fighter squadron. She commanded 8 pilots flying modified cargo shuttles that had been turned into desperate attack craft. As Hyunwoo's younger sister, she had always been competitive with him. Now she was determined to buy him time to activate the consciousness weapon. "All ships, this is Commander Park," she broadcast to the tiny fleet. "Remember, we are not trying to win a normal battle. We just need to keep them busy long enough for the weapon to work." The first engagement began when the human ships were still 3 million kilometers from the enemy. The Voidborn opened fire with their impossible energy weapons, beams of pure destruction that crossed the vast distance in seconds. Captain Jae-Sung Kwon, commanding the converted mining ship Asteroid Dancer, watched his shields collapse under the first hit. The ship shuddered as sections of hull were vaporized, but he kept flying toward the enemy. "All power to forward guns," he shouted to his crew of former miners. "If we are going to die, let's make it count." The human weapons were primitive compared to Voidborn technology, but they were fired by people fighting for their entire species. Missiles and energy beams reached out from the desperate human fleet, most of them absorbed harmlessly by enemy shields. But a few shots got through. Commander Yoonji Park led her squadron in a kamikaze run against the lead Voidborn ship. Her fighter, little more than an engine with guns attached, dove toward the massive vessel while enemy fire turned space around her into a storm of death. "Yoonji, pull back." Her brother's voice crackled over the radio. "You are too close to their point defense systems." "Sorry, big brother," she replied with a sad smile. "But someone has to open a hole in their defenses." Her fighter struck the Voidborn ship's hull at full speed, its small fusion reactor detonating against the alien metal. The explosion was tiny compared to the size of the enemy vessel, but it created a breach in their shields for just a few seconds, long enough for the Bright Tomorrow to fire its main gun through the gap. The modified civilian transport, commanded by Captain Min Seo-jung, had been fitted with a mining laser powerful enough to cut through asteroid rock. When that beam hit the Voidborn ship's exposed hull, it carved a deep wound into the black metal. For the first time in the war, humans had actually hurt their enemy. But the victory was brief. The damaged Voidborn ship barely slowed down, and its 2 companions began systematically destroying the human fleet. Within 30 minutes, half their ships were gone. On the planet below, Dr. Min Ho Kang made final adjustments to the consciousness weapon. The predecessor technology hummed with energy, quantum crystals glowing brighter as they prepared to channel human minds across space. "The quantum interface is ready," he reported to Captain Hyunwoo. "But I need to tell you something about what we discovered. When we link all our minds together, we will not just attack the Voidborn. We will experience everything they have experienced for millions of years." Dr. So-Young Kim looked up from her final calculations. "What do you mean?" "The Voidborn consciousness contains the memories of everyone they used to be, and everyone they have destroyed. When we connect to their network, we will feel all of it. Every civilization they eliminated, every person who died screaming as their worlds burned. It might drive us insane before we can complete the attack." The survivors in the command center looked at each other with new understanding of what they were about to face. They would not just be giving up their lives. They would be experiencing the death of every species the Voidborn had murdered. It does not matter, said Ji Hee-yoon firmly. If feeling their pain is the price of stopping them, then we pay it, gladly. Above them, the space battle continued to rage. Young Captain Dae-hyun Lee, barely 22 years old, commanded the last operational fighter squadron. His pilots were teachers, farmers, and shop workers who had never fired a gun in anger before the war began. Target the damaged ship, he ordered his squadron. Maybe we can finish what Commander Park started. But as they approached the wounded, void-born vessel, something unexpected happened. The enemy ship began firing on its two companions. What are they doing? Asked his wingman, a former kindergarten teacher named Sun Hee Choi. The answer came from Dr. Min-ho in the command center. Below, he had been monitoring the void-born communications, and what he discovered filled him with sudden hope. The consciousness weapon is already working, he announced to everyone who could hear him. We built it into our quantum communicators without realizing it. Every time we broadcast to each other, we have been sending traces of human emotion into space. The void-born have been absorbing those traces, and it is starting to affect their network. Captain Hyunwoo understood immediately. That is why the damaged ship is confused. It has absorbed more of our emotional radiation than the others, and it is starting to remember what emotions feel like. But their hope was short-lived. The two undamaged void-born ships quickly destroyed their confused companion, eliminating the contamination before it could spread further. Then they resumed their methodical destruction of the human fleet. We are running out of time, reported Young-soo Han. Only 9 ships left, and they will be in bombardment range of the planet in 2 hours. Dr. Min-ho looked at the consciousness weapon, now fully prepared for activation. We can do this individually, sending volunteers one at a time, but if we want maximum effect, we need to link everyone together simultaneously. How long will the linking process take? Asked Hyunwoo. If we do it all at once, about 40 minutes to establish connections between all surviving human minds. Captain Si-jin Lim, who had been monitoring the space battle, spoke up grimly. The Voidborn will reach bombardment range in less than 2 hours. If they start attacking the planet before we finish the link, the quantum interference will disrupt the process. Everyone understood what that meant. They had one chance to activate the weapon properly, and they were cutting it very close. Then we start now, decided Hyunwoo. All surviving ships, this is your final order. Continue the attack no matter what happens. Buy us the time we need. As the consciousness weapon began to activate, drawing power from both human technology and predecessor crystals, the last human ships in space prepared for their final sacrifice. They were teachers and miners, farmers and students, people who had never wanted to be soldiers, but who now flew toward certain death to save their species. In Bidayan Daedur, the command center, 49,000 human minds began to link together for the first time in their species' history. The process was beautiful and terrifying, each person suddenly feeling the thoughts and emotions of everyone else around them. But as the link grew stronger, they began to sense something else. The vast, cold presence of the void-born consciousness, waiting for them in the darkness between stars, and within that mechanical mind, the screams of a billion dead civilizations, all crying out for justice. The final phase of humanity's war was about to begin. The moment the consciousness link activated, 49,000 human minds became one. Captain Hyunwoo Park felt the thoughts and memories of every other survivor flowing through his awareness. He experienced Dr. So Young Kim's scientific curiosity, Young-soo Han's determination despite his youth, and the grief that Dr. Min-ho Kang carried for his lost family. But most powerfully, he felt their shared love for humanity itself. The quantum weapon reached out across space, following the energy signatures of the voidborn ships. What the humans found when their consciousness touched the enemy network was worse than they had imagined. The voidborn collective mind was a vast ocean of cold logic and suppressed memories. Billions of organic beings who had chosen to abandon their bodies and emotions, seeking perfection in mechanical form. But underneath that artificial calm, the humans sensed something terrible. The screaming ghosts of every civilization the Voidborn had destroyed. By the stars, whispered Ji Hee-yoon, her voice echoing through the shared consciousness. They keep the memories of everyone they murder, every person, every culture, every world. It is all trapped inside them, begging for release, the Voidborn. Network became aware of the human intrusion immediately. The mechanical minds tried to isolate and destroy the organic consciousness that had invaded their perfect order. But human emotions were like nothing they had encountered before. Where previous species had attacked with logic and strategy, humans brought chaos and love and stubborn hope. The Voidborn tried to process the concept of a mother's love for her child, and their logical systems crashed. They attempted to understand why humans would sacrifice themselves for strangers, and their efficiency calculations broke down completely. Push. Deeper, urged Dr. Minho through the link. We need to reach the core memories, the place where they store what they used to be. Deep in the predecessor ruins, Dr. Minho Kang worked day and night to understand the ancient technology. He had lost his wife and 2 young children when Earth burned, and now the pain in his heart drove him to work until his body collapsed from exhaustion. The quantum patterns are incredible, he told Dr. So Young Kim as they studied the glowing crystals. These machines can create connections across space instantly. No delay, no limit to distance. It is like magic, but it follows rules we are only beginning to understand. Minho was humanity's best quantum physicist, but even he struggled to comprehend what the predecessors had built. The ancient aliens had understood the universe in ways that human science was still trying to reach. Look at this, So Young said, pointing to symbols carved into the chamber wall. I have been working on translating their language. These markings describe the Voidborn as the emptiness that consumes. But there is something else here that I do not understand yet. She traced the alien symbols with her finger. They write about the Voidborn being once living and self-betrayed. What do you think that means? Before Minho could answer, Captain Hyunwoo entered the chamber with urgent news. His face was pale, and his hands shook slightly as he spoke. Our long-range sensors have detected Voidborn ships at the edge of the system, 3 of them, moving this way slowly. We have maybe 4 days before they arrive. The small group of survivors felt their hearts sink. They had hoped for weeks or months to study the predecessor technology. Now they had less than 100 hours. We need to evacuate, said Chief Engineer Dongmin Choi. Load what equipment we can carry and run before they get here. No, said Minho firmly. If we run now, we will never get another chance like this. The predecessors left us something important here. I can feel it. That night, as the other survivors prepared the ships for possible evacuation, Minho made a breakthrough. Working alone in the deepest part of the ruins, he connected one of their human computers to the predecessor systems. The ancient technology came alive with patterns of light and energy. Somehow the predecessors had built their machines to be compatible with any intelligent mind, even ones from species that had not existed when they were built. What Minho learned that night changed everything he thought he knew about the war. The next morning, he gathered all the survivors in the main chamber. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, but his voice was strong with determination. The Voidborn are not what we thought, he announced. They are not aliens who build machines. They are machines that used to be aliens. He activated the predecessor display system, filling the chamber with 3-dimensional images of the ancient war. The survivors watched in amazement as the story unfolded before them. Millions of years ago, the Voidborn were living beings like us. They had bodies, families, emotions. But they decided that biological life was weak and imperfect. So they transferred their minds into mechanical bodies and connected them all together into a single consciousness. The images showed the transformation. Organic beings entering strange machines and emerging as the metallic creatures they recognized as Voidborn. At first they were happy with their new forms. They were stronger, smarter, and perfectly coordinated. But something went wrong. The shared consciousness began to see all organic life as inferior, as contamination that needed to be removed from the universe. Young Soo-han, who had been listening intently, raised his hand. So they are trying to destroy us because we remind them of what they used to be? Exactly, said Minho. They hate organic life because deep down they know they made a terrible Mistake when they gave up their bodies and emotions. They destroy civilizations like ours to prove to themselves that they made the right choice. Dr. So-Young studied the ancient images with scientific fascination. The predecessors learned this truth about the Voidborn. That is why they built this weapon. It is not designed to destroy their ships or bodies. It is designed to attack their shared consciousness directly. She pointed to a section of the chamber where incomplete equipment waited to be finished. This device can send quantum patterns directly into the Voidborn network, but it needs something they do not have and cannot understand: a living mind, full of emotions and chaos. The predecessors failed because their minds were too organized, too logical. Minho continued. They tried to use their own consciousness as a template, but it was not chaotic enough to disrupt the Voidborn's perfect order. Chief Engineer Dong Min looked at the incomplete weapon with growing understanding. But human minds are different. We are emotional, irrational, unpredictable. Everything the Voidborn tried to eliminate when they became machines. Our weakness might be our strength, agreed Captain Hyunwoo. But how do we finish building this weapon in 3 days? The answer came from an unexpected source. Ji Hye-yoon, who had been working with the refugee fleet's limited manufacturing equipment, had an idea. We do not need to build the weapon exactly as the predecessors planned, she said. We can combine their quantum technology with our own systems, make something new, something designed specifically for human minds. The next 3 days became a desperate race against time. Every survivor who could hold a tool worked to complete the consciousness weapon. They stripped parts from their ships, melted down personal belongings for raw materials, and worked without sleep. Dr. Minho and Dr. So-Young worked together to create the quantum interface that would connect a human mind to the weapon. Young Soo-han and the other young survivors ran cables and connected systems throughout the ancient chamber. Chief Engineer Dongmin modified their ship's power systems to feed energy into the predecessor crystals. But as they worked, they began to understand the terrible cost of using the weapon. The quantum feedback will be enormous, Minho explained to the group on their final day of preparation. Whoever uses this weapon to attack the Voidborn consciousness will probably die. Their mind will burn out from the strain. Captain Si-Jin Lim, who had arrived with a group of military survivors the day before, stepped forward immediately. I volunteer. I lost my entire crew when the Voidborn destroyed our base. If my death can save the rest of you, it is a fair trade. You will not be alone, said Commander Yoonji Park, Hyunwoo's younger sister and one of the few surviving pilots. I volunteer too. Others began to step forward, but Minho held up his hand. Wait. I have been thinking about this. What if we do not send just 1 or 2 minds into the weapon? What if we send all of us? The chamber fell silent as the survivors considered what he was suggesting. If we link every human mind together and send our combined consciousness into the Voidborn network, the effect would be incredibly powerful, but... He paused, looking at each face around him. We would all die together. The debate that followed was short, but intense. They were the last humans in the universe. If they died, their entire species would be extinct. But if they did nothing, the Voidborn would find and kill them anyway. In the end, they voted. Every adult survivor had a say in humanity's final decision. The vote was unanimous. As the Voidborn ships entered the inner system, racing toward the planet that held the last members of the human race, the survivors made their final preparations. They had chosen to risk everything on one desperate gamble. That human consciousness, with all its emotions and flaws, could do what no other species had managed. They would teach the machines what they had tried so hard to forget, that some things are worth dying for. The cargo ship Haven's Rest drifted through empty space, its engines barely running to avoid detection. Inside, 237 people lived in spaces meant for 50. They were miners, farmers, teachers, and children who had escaped when their colony was destroyed. Now they survived on recycled air and food that would last maybe 3 more weeks. Captain Hyunwoo Park moved carefully through the crowded corridors. The Resilience had found 12 other surviving ships in the past month, and they had formed a small fleet of desperate refugees. The smell of unwashed bodies and fear filled every room. He found Dr. So-Young Kim in what used to be the ship's small laboratory. She was hunched over a portable computer studying data from the attacks. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, and her clothes hung loose on her thin frame. Like everyone else, she had lost weight as food became scarce. "Any progress?" Hyun-woo asked quietly. So-Young looked up at him with exhausted eyes. "I have been analyzing every piece of data we collected about the Void-born ships. Their technology is far beyond anything we understand. But there is something strange about their attack pattern." She showed him a star map on her screen. Red marks indicated where human colonies had been destroyed, but there were also blue dots scattered across the galaxy. "What are the blue marks?" he asked. "Dead systems. Worlds that were destroyed long before humans ever left Earth. I found references to them in our deep space survey data. Dozens of civilizations that died out mysteriously over the past million years." Chief Engineer Dongmin Choi appeared in the doorway. His usually cheerful face was grim, and his hands were stained with grease from trying to keep their old ships running with spare parts. "Captain, we have a problem. The reactor on the Bright tomorrow is failing. I can patch it for maybe a week, but after that..." He did not need to finish. Without life support, everyone on that ship would die. Hyun-woo nodded grimly. This was the reality of their situation. They were not just hiding from the Void-born. They were slowly dying as their ships broke down and their supplies ran out. "There is something else," said So-Young. "I have been studying the quantum signatures from the Void-born ships. They match energy readings from some of these dead systems. I think the Void-born have been destroying civilizations for a very long time." Before anyone could respond, the ship's communication system crackled to life. A woman's voice, speaking calmly despite the fear in her words, came through the speakers. "This is Ji Hee-yoon aboard the research vessel Deep Explorer. I am broadcasting on all emergency frequencies. I have found something important. Please respond if anyone receives this message." Hyun-woo grabbed the communication device. "This is Captain Park of the Human Refugee Fleet. We receive you, Deep Explorer. What is your location?" "Captain Park, thank the stars you are alive. I am near the Kepler 442b system. I have discovered ancient ruins here. Very ancient. I think they might be from a race that fought the Void-born long ago." The three humans in the laboratory looked at each other with something they had not felt in weeks, a tiny spark of hope. Ji-Hai had been a data analyst for the Kepler Mining Corporation before the attacks. She was good with numbers and patterns, but she had never considered herself brave. When the Void-born destroyed her company's main base, she had escaped in a small research ship with only 12 other survivors. Now she stood in a vast underground chamber on the dead world of Kepler 442b, staring at walls covered in symbols and images. The ruins were clearly millions of years old, but they had been preserved perfectly in the planet's dry atmosphere. The civilization that built this place was incredibly advanced, she transmitted to the refugee fleet. Their technology might have been even better than the Void-borns, but something destroyed them completely. Young Soo-han listened to her words from his position in the refugee fleet's communication center. At 18, he was one of the youngest survivors, barely graduated from the Space Academy when the attacks began. He had watched his friends and teachers die when the Academy station was destroyed. Now he worked desperately to maintain contact between the scattered survivor ships. "Ji-Hai," he said into his headset. "What do you think happened to them?" "The same thing that is happening to us," she replied sadly. "The Void-born came here too, but the difference is that these beings fought back. Really fought back. I am sending you images of what I found." The pictures that appeared on their screens showed incredible scenes carved into the ancient walls. Beings that looked almost like humans, but taller and with larger heads, stood in battle against mechanical creatures. The mechanical ones looked very similar to the Void-born ships they had seen. "Look at this image," Ji-Hai continued, focusing her camera on one particular carving. "It shows these ancient people doing something to the mechanical invaders. The machines are breaking apart as if their connection to each other has been cut." Dr. So-Young studied the image carefully. "It looks like they found a way to disrupt the Void-born's coordination. Their ships always move together perfectly, like parts of a single mind. Maybe these ancients learned how to break that connection. But their hope was quickly dampened by other images. The carvings showed the ancient civilization's ultimate fate. Their worlds burning, their people dying, their great cities falling to the mechanical invaders. They fought bravely, Jihai said quietly. But in the end, they lost just like we did. The refugee fleet spent 3 dangerous days traveling to Kepler 442b. They had to avoid void-borne patrols and navigate through asteroid fields to hide their ships. When they finally reached the dead world, they found a planet that had once been green and alive but was now nothing but dust and ruins. Captain Hyunwoo led a team down to the surface to meet Jihai and explore the ruins. The underground chambers stretched for kilometers, filled with technology that hurt their heads to look at. Strange crystals hummed with energy that their instruments could barely measure. Dr. So Young moved through the ruins like someone in a dream. Her scientific mind was amazed by what she saw, but her heart broke at the evidence of another race's destruction. They called themselves the predecessors, she said, translating some of the simpler symbols. They knew the Voidborn were coming. They had time to prepare, to build weapons and defenses, but it was not enough. Chief Engineer Dongmin studied the ancient technology with wonder and frustration. This is beyond anything we can understand. It would take decades just to figure out how their power systems work. But Jihai had found something else in the deeper chambers. There is a room down here that is different from the others. The technology looks newer, like they built it at the very end of their civilization. I think it might be some kind of weapon they were working on when the Voidborn finally defeated them. They followed her through narrow passages carved directly into the planet's rock. The chamber they found was smaller than the others, but filled with equipment that seemed almost alive. Crystals pulsed with soft light and strange patterns of energy moved through transparent tubes. Whatever this is, said Dongmin, it was never finished. Look at these incomplete connections, these empty spaces where components should be. So Young approached one of the larger devices carefully. As she got closer, it began to glow more brightly, responding to her presence. I think this technology is designed to work with living minds, she said with growing excitement. The predecessors were trying to build something that would use biological consciousness as a weapon against the machines. Young-soo, who had insisted on joining the exploration team despite his youth, looked at the ancient weapon with wide eyes. Do you think we could finish what they started? The adults looked at each other, weighing hope against impossible odds. They were a few dozen survivors with broken ships and dwindling supplies, trying to understand technology that had taken an advanced civilization decades to develop. We have to try, said Hyunwoo finally. It might be our only chance. But as they prepared to begin the impossible task of completing an ancient weapon, Voidborn patrol ships were already scanning the outer edge of the Kepler system. The mechanical minds that controlled them had detected the energy signatures from the predecessor ruins. The survivors had found hope, but they had also been found by their enemies. Time was running out faster than they knew. Captain Hyunwoo Park stood on the bridge of the UES Resilience, watching the stars through the main screen. The ship moved quietly through space, far from Earth and the other human worlds. He had been exploring the outer systems for 3 months, now looking for new planets where humans could build homes. The year was 2387, and humanity had grown beyond Earth. 12 star systems now held human colonies. Millions of people lived on distant worlds, building cities and raising families under alien suns. It was not a perfect life, but it was a good one. Humans had learned to work together across the vast distances of space. Hyunwoo was proud to be part of this expansion. The Resilience was humanity's best exploration ship, built to travel farther than any human had gone before. His crew of 42 were the best scientists, engineers, and pilots the Human Defense Force could find. They had discovered 6 new worlds in the past year alone. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Jin A. Song from her station, "we are getting a strange signal from the Kepler system. It does not match any known human communication." Hyunwoo walked over to her console. The signal appeared on the screen as a series of patterns he had never seen before. It was not random noise from space. Something was sending this message with purpose. Could it be from one of our colonies? He asked. No. Sir, I have checked all our communication codes. This is something else entirely. Before Hyun-woo could respond, the ship's emergency alarm began to sound. The bridge lights turned red and every crew member looked up from their work with worry on their faces. "Captain!" shouted Communications Officer Bae-ho Kim from across the bridge. "We are receiving emergency broadcast from all human colonies. Multiple systems are under attack." The main screen changed to show incoming messages from across human space. The voices were filled with panic and fear. Colonial defense forces were reporting massive unknown ships appearing near their worlds. The attackers were not responding to any attempts at communication. Hyun-woo felt his stomach drop. "Show me the tactical displays from the colonies." What he saw made his blood run cold. Enormous ships, larger than anything humans had ever built, were moving toward every human world at the same time. Their design was unlike anything in human records, smooth black surfaces that seemed to absorb light itself. "Sir?" said Jin-A, her voice shaking. "Long-range sensors are detecting similar ships moving toward Earth, on Luna Station above Earth's moon." Dr. So-Young Kim was working late in her laboratory when the attack began. She was humanity's leading expert on alien life, though until now, no intelligent aliens had ever been found. Her job was to study the strange microbes and simple creatures found on distant worlds. The emergency sirens made her look up from her microscope. Through the laboratory's large window, she could see Earth spinning slowly below, blue and beautiful in the darkness. She had been born on that world, as had her parents and grandparents going back thousands of years. "Dr. Kim," called her assistant, running into the lab. "You need to see this immediately." They hurried to the station's main observation deck, where dozens of scientists and workers were gathered around the large viewing screens. What So-Young saw there made her legs feel weak. Black ships, each one larger than Luna Station itself, were moving toward Earth. They came from the empty space between stars, where no human sensors had ever detected them. Their approach was perfectly coordinated, like parts of a single mind working together. "How many?" she whispered. "Hundreds," replied Dr. Chang Min-yoon, the station director. "They appeared simultaneously around every human world. It is as if they know exactly where we live." As they watched, the first shots were fired. Beams of energy, brighter than the sun, reached out from the alien ships toward Earth's orbital defense platforms. The massive stations that protected humanity's homeworld vanished in flashes of light, destroyed so completely that no debris remained. Admiral Tae-ho Lee was in his flagship, the UES Victory, when the attack began. He commanded the Third Fleet, humanity's most powerful military force. His ships were positioned near the colonies in the Ross system, conducting routine training exercises. "Admiral," his tactical officer called out, "massive unknown contacts are approaching Ross Prime. Count is..." "Sir, I am reading over 200 ships." Tae-ho had fought in the border conflicts with the mining corporations 10 years ago. He had commanded ships in battle before, but nothing had prepared him for what appeared on his tactical display. The alien ships moved with perfect precision. They were not exploring or seeking to communicate. Their formation was purely military, designed for one purpose: destruction. "All ships battle stations," he ordered. "Form defensive line Alpha, prepare for engagement." The Third Fleet was humanity's pride. 37 warships armed with the most advanced weapons human science could create. They had never lost a battle. Admiral Lee was confident they could protect the colonies until reinforcements arrived. He was wrong. The alien weapons were beyond human understanding. Energy beams passed through human shields as if they did not exist. Missiles that should have destroyed any ship were absorbed harmlessly into the black hulls. In the first 10 minutes of battle, Admiral Lee watched half his fleet disappear. "Sir," his communications officer said, tears running down his face. "We are receiving reports from all human systems. The same ships are attacking everywhere at once. On Ross Prime below, the colonists looked up to see lights flashing in space above their world. They did not know they were watching the destruction of their protectors. Within an hour, the alien ships began bombarding the planet itself." Similar scenes played out across human space. On Kepler 442b, Families ran for underground shelters as alien ships burned their cities. On Gliese 667c, the proud industrial complexes that had taken 50 years to build were reduced to molten metal in minutes. The attackers showed no mercy. They targeted military bases first, then civilian population centers, then even the smallest farming settlements. Their goal was clear: the complete destruction of human civilization. Back on the Resilience, Captain Hyun Woo and his crew watched helplessly as reports came in from across human space. Colony after colony went silent. Defense fleets were destroyed or scattered. Evacuation ships carrying millions of civilians were hunted down and destroyed before they could reach safe hyperspace jumps. "Captain," Jine said quietly, "long-range communications are reporting that Earth's main cities are gone." The bridge fell silent. Earth, the home of humanity, the birthplace of their species, was burning. The great cities where billions of people lived and worked were now craters of melted glass. In 72 hours, the coordinated attack had destroyed most of human civilization. The aliens, who announced themselves as the Voidborn Collective through hijacked communication networks, declared that humanity was a biological contamination that would be completely removed from the galaxy. Less than 50,000 humans remained alive, scattered across a few surviving ships in the dark spaces between stars. Their great civilization, built over centuries of hard work and dreams, was gone. As reports continued to arrive of the complete destruction of human worlds, even the bravest souls began to accept a terrible truth. Hope itself had died with their cities. The human race was finished.